Hi, I'm Etonix Pyro, founder of Shadowed Soul Studios. We create assets for the Unity game engine and provide freelance development and design services for all manner of things. Personally, I've been an avid lover of games since I was a young child, especially those of the video variety. Chip's Challenge had me instantly hooked, and Super Mario Bros. Kept me up so many nights. To say I was addicted was a bit of an understatement. Back in 2007, I went from playing on to working on an existing live service game called Moral Decay LP Mud, a relic from 1992. In 2017, I was the lead active administrator for the service, and I've been keeping it alive, and I've even managed to regrow some of the player base since then. But after a couple of years of that, I decided that it was time for more and ventured out into Unity, where I've been learning daily ever since. But enough about me. Let's move on to the topic of the day, AI. And no, not the kind that chases you through Elwyn Forest when you've stolen their candle. The kind that will one day be our cybernetic overlords. Within the past year, we've seen a bit of an explosion in the artificial intelligence sphere. Large language models have taken the spotlight and are fastidiously interweaving themselves into everyday life, answering questions, assisting with creative writing, software development, funding lawyers' yachts. I could continue, but I wouldn't reach the end of the list before this video ends. Before we go further, I would like to add that I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. There are plenty of open lawsuits against OpenAI, Stability AI, and a handful of others challenging whether or not they had legal permissions to train their models on the datasets that they trained them on. And with the United States Supreme Court recently ruling that AI-generated artwork cannot be copywritten, it still leaves a handful of questions yet to be answered. One of the biggest that comes to mind being how much alteration do I have to put into an AI-generated artwork before it's no longer considered generated by an AI and therefore available to be copywritten? Thankfully, we can kind of skirt around some of these questions for now by training our own models on data we already own and have full rights to. Unfortunately, AMD graphics cards cannot currently train models, so I will not be showcasing that in this video. AMD is working on it with their Radeon Open Compute platform, but it's not quite there yet. So, without further delay, today I'm going to show you how easy it is to generate AI art on your own computer. Let's begin. However, before we can begin generating our images, we need to ensure that we have some software installed, namely Python 3.10.6, Node JavaScript engine for the Node Package Manager and Yarn, and Git. However, considering we're at a game developers conference, I'm going to assume we have that already. Now, when we're installing Python and Node, we want to ensure that both executables are added to the path for the environment. This means that no matter where we are in the command prompt, we can access them without having to give a direct file reference. And as I move along through this installation process, you can see me checking them and ensuring that they're enabled, just to be safe. And don't worry, I'll provide slides with links at the end of this video so that you can get the versions you need. Now, once we're done installing Node, Git, and Python, we want to open up a command prompt window and navigate to a folder that we won't get lost trying to find. From there, we're going to download two Git repositories from GitHub. The first one is AMD specific, but it is the Stable Diffusion Web UI by Automatic 1111. I will provide the NVIDIA specific repo at the end of this video. In addition, we're going to download Stability AI's recently released Stable Studio package. Now, this adds a different web UI that runs separately from the automatic 1111 web UI, and I think it just looks a bit cleaner and it's a little bit more user-friendly if you don't want to delve into all of the options and details. But I'll show you a bit of that later too. Don't worry. Next, we're going to enter the Stable Diffusion Web UI DirectML folder. From there, we're going to both initialize and update any Git submodules that may need updating. A Git submodule is just another repository within a repository. From there, we're going to copy the webui user.bat file to a new file called stablestudio.bat. Then we're going to open stablestudio.bat in Notepad so that we can add some command line arguments. Now, NVIDIA users only have to pay attention to two of these, but in my case, because AMD is late to the party, I have to add a few more to get it to behave in a manner that will actually produce images and not just black squares. However, the main two that you need to pay attention to if you're an NVIDIA user are the core's allow origins flag, which lets Stable Studio actually communicate with the API, and the no web UI flag, which disables the automatic 1111 Stable Diffusion web UI, which is default, and just enables the API. Next, we're going to open up stablestudio.bat and let it run because it's going to take a while.
Several days later.
Now, while that installs, we're going to head over to huggingface.co and download a text-to-image model, specifically Stable Diffusion 2.1 from Stability AI. And this is going to give us a bit of information about the model itself, whatever the creator decided to list, contributions, etc. But we're going to head to the Files and Downloads tab and select the v-2-1_768-ema-pruned.safe tensors link. It is smaller and it is what we want. That'll take us to the next page informing us that it's a large file, but we can still download it. So we'll select that link and save it to our Stable Diffusion WebUI DirectML folder under Models and then under Stable Diffusion. We're going to let that download. Then in the meantime, we're going to head over to Civitai. Now this site is a bit iffy. It provides a lot of image generation models and utilities. As you can see here, it's got characters and styles and celebrities, concepts, a plethora of different classifications. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this has safe mode enabled. There's way more to this website, but that's not safe for work, and that's where we are. So we're going to keep it PG-13. Now, you do have to keep in mind that these are all trained by some other person. You cannot verify the authenticity of the data, whether or not they had the appropriate permissions to train these models, or anything of the sorts. But we're going to check out this itty bitty cat model because it is just adorable. We're going to make sure that it's a checkpoint, therefore a model, and that it's a safe tensor file. From there, we can download it into the same folder as the last model that we downloaded from huggingface.co, and just let that download as well. Remember, these files may take a while to download. They're rather large.
The next day.
Once everything is done downloading, the server will finish initializing in an API-only mode, facilitating communication with Stable Studio. Our next step is to open up a new command prompt window in administrator mode. We want to then navigate to the repositories that we downloaded earlier and enter the Stable Studio repository. We're going to enable Core Pack, and then we're going to activate the latest stable version of the Yarn package manager. From there, we're going to invoke Yarn, and it's going to proceed to download and activate any of the required services and additional packages that Stable Studio requires in order to generate images with the Stable Diffusion Web UI. Once that's done, it may take a while, we're going to enter in another command, and this command is just going to enable and activate the Stable Studio package with a specific plugin to communicate with the Stable Diffusion Web UI. Just a little bit of a bridge or an interface, if you would. And all that's left once that's done is to open up our browsers to the link it shows us. When that link has loaded, we're greeted with a clean but pared down version of the Stable Diffusion Web UI. It gives us a randomly generated prompt to work with, but we can click this Shuffle Prompt button until we find one that we actually like. Now, since I'm on an AMD card, I'm going to cut down the images generated to 1 for the sake of this video. In addition, I'm also going to be using the SD version 1.5 model that was installed when we downloaded and installed Stable Diffusion Web UI. We'll hit Dream, and with the help of some video editing, we're going to skip along to the good parts. Now we can see that the image generation has finished and followed the prompt pretty closely to the letter. It is a hypnotic vortex of swirling colors that is most definitely intense and abstract. But before we go much further, I'd like to try out the Itty Bitty Kitty Cat model, simply because I just found it while researching this video, and I'd like to see what it can do. It didn't look too robust, so maybe this prompt won't work, maybe it will. We're going to roll the die. Let's try an Itty Bitty Kitty Cat in a field of flowers. Now we're going to hit the Dream button and see what we can do. Now as you see there, it disappeared as soon as I hit Dream. Instead of the model changing when we used the drop down, it used that first push of the Dream button to send the command to the API to change the model. After we hit it a second time, it should have the model loaded and start generating the image for us. And with the help of some more video magic, we're going to skip ahead to the good parts and get our itty bitty kitty cat. Now our itty bitty kitty cat has been born, and unfortunately it was in a field of fingers and not a field of flowers. But as we said, it was a roll of the die. So let's move on to our next topic here, the Stable Diffusion Web UI without Stable Studio. As you see here, I've got a new command prompt window open, and I've already navigated to the Stable Diffusion Web UI DirectML folder. Now we're going to edit the WebUI user.bat file in order to paste in the command line arguments that allow it to run on an AMD graphics card, but we're going to omit the ones that force it into an API-only mode. We'll then save and go back to the command prompt in order to run the WebUI user.bat file and start up the server. This is going to force it into a server-facing mode instead of an API-only mode so that we can access it from our web browser. And thankfully, in modern versions of Windows, that's as simple as holding Control and clicking on a link. Once you do that, it'll open that link up in a brand new web browser window, ready to go and execute whatever task you have at hand. Now, as you can see here, we've got a different beast entirely from Stable Studio. If you look in the top left, that's where your models are. And if you try to click one, it'll try and load it instantaneously. A stark difference. But for now, I've got something to show you. So we'll move over to the Extensions tab and click on Available so that we can select from the available packages that work with the Stable Diffusion Web UI by default. This is updated from time to time, so you might want to keep an eye on it if you choose to go this route. From here, we're going to search for the Civitai package, just by entering Civitai. And we'll select this one here, I believe this is the one we want, and we'll hit Install. And what that's going to do is download and install that package and set it up so that we can use it. But before we do that, we have to go back over to the Installed tab, not the Settings, and click on Apply and Restart UI. This is going to force refresh the server and the browser to enable any new extensions. Let's select the Civitai Helper tab and scroll through most of these options that we won't use. They let us query model information, check for updates, and even download a new model simply by providing the URL, which I'm going to do here just to show you. Now I enter in the URL and I click the big orange button that says Get Model Info by Civitai URL. This queries the server and gets some basic information about the model. From here, it's up to us to select which folder it goes into and the model version we want before initializing the download. This one is something kind of special. As you can see here, it's called NVJob AIM. And if the word NVJob stands out, it should. He's a fellow Unity asset publisher. And while I can't vouch for the authenticity or the provenance of this data set, or whether or not he was actually able to attain the rights to train these or created them himself, they're pretty cool, and I'd be remiss to say if I didn't want to use them myself. Fortunately, there's a little bit of text here that says game developers can use this model to create their own custom crosshairs in their game development. So we're going to check on this, and unfortunately it's still going, so we're going to move over to yet another package by the same author. This one is called NVJob Magic Circle, and as you might guess, it's perfect for generating summoning circles, casting circles, pentagrams, you name it. It looks cool, it's for magic-y stuff, and again, the same conditions apply. I can't verify it, we don't know, but he says game developers can use it, so we'll download that one next. As you can see, this one is done downloading, and since it's not too far off from the other, I'm just going to adjust it and get the proper URL in here before pulling the data again and downloading the next model. Again, this is the NVJob Magic Circle model. So when that's done processing, we'll be able to start generating, and as you can see, this one was rather quick. So we'll go back up here to the Text to Image tab, and right beside our models, we'll click this little blue square which refreshes our models. And from there, we'll select the NVJob AIM model. Next, we're going to give it a nice prompt, beginning with the token NVJob AIM, because in all of the author's examples, the first token in every prompt was NVJob AIM. We'll follow that up with square crosshair, detailed, and white background, before selecting a fast sampling method and ensuring that the rest of the variables are configured properly in order to coax the image we want out of this AI. Next, we'll click Generate and we'll wait for the results to appear. Now, depending on your graphics card or computer, this could take quite a while, but you will get progress images. One should be appearing before too much longer. And this isn't going to be anywhere near the final image. This is just the first step of many. So we're going to use some more video editing magic and skip along to the good part. Now that our image is done generating, we can see that while unfortunately it isn't squared, it is a very cool crosshair and it is on a white background. We're going to chalk this up as a win because I couldn't have made this, and we're going to move right along into the next section, a shameless plug for Shadowbox Stability, my latest asset. I created this asset to interface the Unity editor directly with the automatic 1111 Stable Diffusion web UI. This allows me to generate all of these images via the API directly within the Unity editor. So let's move on to the slides and Q&A. Thank you for watching.